We'd like to, without further ado, get started today. And I'd like to begin by introducing Colin Lagalia. He is the CEO and Managing Director for Epichem. Colin?
Thanks, Steve, and good evening, good afternoon, and good morning to our audience, wherever you may be around the world. And it gives me a great privilege to be joined today by our key speaker, Dr. Gary Pitt, who is the Head of Chemistry at Epichem, and Gary will be presenting today on the topic as presented and outlined and introduced by Steve. But allow me to talk a bit about Epichem. In the last 18 years, Epichem was discovered with two objectives in mind. The first one is to meet an unmet need at the marketplace around medicinal chemistry expertise and commercial chemistry. And the second objective was to provide employment opportunities for PhD qualified chemists across the globe. Many of those who were lost to either overseas or being baristas in a cafe, and probably more recently Uber drivers, with the current pandemic and the decimation of the academic industry worldwide. But I'm happy to share with you that we now have two purpose-built state-of-the-art laboratories here at Technology Park in Australia, employing a very large team of postgraduate and PhD qualified chemists. And we have a number of exciting propositions that we'll talk to you about today. But we are an Australian-based contract research organisation, and we are also a registered research service provider. So for those of you that have entities or are keen to set up entities in Australia, that means that there is a very lucrative R&D tax refund initiative that the government provides, where for every dollar you invest in research and development with an organisation like Epichem as a contracted research organisation and service provider, there is a return of 43.5 cents in the dollar. And I think that makes it very, very attractive for a lot of our clients worldwide. Thanks, Sammy. So we have 5 divisions of the organisation. So we have synthetic and medicinal chemistry, and that's our drug discovery, drug development and drug design arm of the business. We also produce pharmaceutical reference standards for organisations that are moving from patents to off-patent or generics, or those that are moving from prescription to over-the-counter medication. Our third division is custom synthesis. As the name suggests, we make a lot of bespoke molecules and compounds on behalf of our global audience. Our fourth division is analytical chemistry. So this allows us to also work in the space, not necessarily just in the life science or biotech space, but we also have oil and gas and mining clients in this space as well. And then material science is our fifth division, and that's where we accelerate commercialization of the IP on behalf of our clients with method development and chemistry consulting capability. And more than happy to talk more about those after this webinar or offline as you see fit. Thanks, Sammy. So Epichem is a certified with ISO 9001, and we're also accredited with ISO 17025 for the setup of laboratory, and 17034, which is the global standard for reference manufacturing. We are also recognised as one of the top 10 Australian employers of PhD graduates. That's something we're very proud of in supporting the knowledge economy. And we've also the winner of a number of export-based awards. Currently, Epichem exports more than 80% of its products and services to more than 40 countries. And I'm happy to share with the audience today that we are the 2021 Export of the Year for International Health, an award we also won in 2020 and 2019 during the height of the pandemic. But we've also won that award on more than 5 occasions, which puts us into the Export Hall of Fame. So, you know, really, really keen to share that success with the audience. Thanks, Sammy. And then with that, I will hand over to Dr. Gary Pitt, who is our main presenter today, talking about the importance of quality in drug discovery. So with that, I'll hand over to Gary. Thanks, Gary.
Thanks. Yeah, thanks, Colin. Yeah, so just to start, I just wanted to make clear that sort of this presentation is aimed towards the medicinal chemistry and drug discovery entity that we supply at Epichem. And as Colin said, we do provide lots of other services that we can talk about in the questionnaire and service at the end. So if you can have the next slide, please. So today I just wanted to go through a few items. So as I said, I do a quick introduction of myself and Epichem, and then go through the process of drug discovery, because obviously it depends on the audience, but I can give a level of the sort of entities that Epichem can help with, and how we can help to expedite their drug discovery for multiple different stakeholders. In this, this will also allude into how drug discovery itself has evolved over the last few years, and how important CROs are coming in within that system now. The next parts are really all around the focus of quality, and this is really just to emphasize how we approach things at Epichem, and how we actually value that quality is important to all entities within drug discovery. And one of that thing is really defining what quality is, and I'll go through that as we go through the presentation. So next slide, please. So just about myself. So essentially, I am a drug discoverer by trade. I am a medicinal chemist by training. I've been lucky to have worked in multiple areas within the drug discovery pipeline, and in my career I have worked in both biotech, big biotech and big pharma, and also had an entity and a time within the academia field. With this, that means that I've had experience essentially of looking at the very early part of the drug discovery pipeline, where you're looking at hit identification, which was up the Walter Eliza Institute in Australia, which is where we set up ultra high throughput screening, and built the strategies about developing hits and how to progress them. And at the other end of the pipeline, I've worked in the clinical field, which is at 360 Biolabs, where we actually developed methods for supporting phase 1 clinical trials in humans. But as you can see, the majority of my career is actually spent in drug discovery as a medicinal chemist at Redex, Biota and Ferring Pharmaceuticals. Go to the next slide, please. So one of the things I want to emphasize is around Epichem. Epichem is really proud of our vision and mission statements, and this is something that we really push to all our staff, in that it's important to have that belief in these kind of mission statements. And what I mean by that is really the fact that we do focus on the service and the quality that we deliver to our clients, and it's fundamental to our everyday approach to all the work that we do. We can move to the next slide, please. So as Colin alluded to, the medicinal chemistry expertise is mainly made up of PhD qualified chemists. We have worked on multiple projects from hit to lead optimization, and also made and synthesized libraries, bespoke libraries, and scaled up compounds as a result of those libraries. We've classed ourselves as a company which is innovative thinkers, and realistically we are what we would class as drug hunting experts, and we have the actual evidence to support that, and we have worked on multiple different kinds of structural entities within the company. One of the things that I did want to make clear here is that there's always this perception that medicinal chemistry is around small molecules, but we have done a number of projects where we worked on drug conjugates, and in that we may be applying fluorescent tags, and then there's the other entity where we have supplied metabolites as well at the later stages of projects, or actually during the investigation of a project. Through this, we also have very clear project milestones, and I'll go into more detail about this in our approach in the later slides. But within those milestones, it's all guided by the project and the client's requirements. And we utilize our network of collaborators, which gives us the access to, internally we have services such as analytical chemistry services, but in some cases there are additional services that we can outsource, and we have the capabilities to address needs when they arise, such as if we need to do some chiral separation or computational chemistry, etc. We can go to the next slide, please. So here I just wanted to initially just describe the drug discovery process. As you can see, this is a paper from Nature, and we always assume that drug discovery is a very simple, straight process, but actually it's a very complicated, convoluted mechanism where each of those parts has an important factor that adds to the next one, and within those there's always a contribution from chemistry, and the quality of that chemistry impacts on how we can progress between those sections from hit to lead to optimization. So if we have the next slide, please. So here I just want to show this, the simplified version and the standard version that you see of the drug discovery pipeline. Obviously, this is a much easier way to visualize the process, but as I said, I think it's good to actually have an understanding that in the background it is actually a complicated machine. So within this, the standard pipeline, as I said, we look at hit ID, which is really about risk identification. And then we can move into hit to lead, which is where we're starting to look around those risks and trying to eliminate the risks that are factored within that particular structure series or that structural series. And as we move further forward along to lead optimization and clinical candidates, it then all comes about mechanistic and safety and target driven. And one of the fundamental parts of this whole process is related to what we call the target product profile. And each individual project will have that at the core of the project. Through this process, it's always through an iterative development process where we make, we test, we analyze, and we evaluate the results. And that's always fed back into this pipeline as a continuous flow process. And the next slide, please. So when I started in the 90s, this whole process was very much under the pharma control. And what I mean by that is the infrastructure, the staffing, the strategic planning, and the funding was all controlled within Big Pharma. That was part of the way that companies were set up in those days, in the fact that they tended to focus on one particular therapeutic field, or they had an entity, so you could control those costs. But as things have changed, that has evolved, and I'd like to go to the next slide, please. So here I just wanted to show a recent publication in Medichem, which actually I think is a very good one for the audience to actually review, because it gives you an understanding of how CROs have become more important to drug discovery as a whole. So as I said, in the 90s, it was very much a very pharma-centric environment. And then around the 2000s, pharma decided that actually that it wasn't cost effective to have these large infrastructures, these large teams to maintain across the whole field, when they could actually budget and plan and have strategic moving in a much better agile way by moving entities into individual skill sets such as CROs. The diagram here doesn't actually obviously include biotechs, but obviously the other factor what comes into this around the 2000s is the emergence of biotechs as well. So biotechs and pharma really sit in that middle entity. Up to today, you can see that the pharma has predominantly moved into CROs, and we have the different colored boxes there because they actually rely to different technologies such as chemistry, pharmacology, ADME, and biology. And you'll see in the next slide, this sort of emphasizes how these entities have changed. And the main thing is that there's really three potential sort of models that companies have moved to. and that's either that the pharma or the biotech sits in the middle and they work through partnerships with individual entities for those particular skill sets, such as medicinal chemistry, pharmacology or biology or ADME. As it moves on, then there is some entities where you have CROs who can actually do all of that capability and have taken on basically the role of the big infrastructure that pharma had, where you can keep all that chemistry and pharmacology all within the same house. But obviously that comes at cost and risk, because you're then putting, as such, all your eggs into one basket, and you have issues such as location. And in the light of the recent pandemics, that's been a big impact on how people have approached and which pharma and which CROs the pharma actually use. So the other more common model is through either A or B, where you actually move into a single entity who then potentially can outsource that to other collaborative partners, such as in the one highlighted in C, or you have a central entity where you manage it as a pharma and you actually outsource the individual entities to each of the skill sets. So at Epichem, we work in a hybrid between A and B, essentially, A and C, in that we have a number of collaborative partners who can assist us in all those critical paths that are required for drug discovery, such as supporting later phase clinical trials, pharmacology advice, and we can also get access to some key opinion leaders around early stages of drug discovery, as I said, about hit identification, and even developing assays and how to evolve into biomarkers, etc. The next slide, please. So one of the things that, as I said in this presentation, is really about quality. And quality is really an emphasis around making sure that you actually get what you expect. So what I wanted to say here is just go through a few bullet points of the kind of entities that we feel that we cover and how we approach that as Epichem. So one of the things that I think as a customer is really knowing that your work will be completed as you expected. So can I have the next slide, please? So the way that we approach this at Epichem is that we have tailored professionals who support that service throughout the whole project. Your project is very individual and it is bespoke, and we design and manage the project to your requirements. Within that, we have a designated project management manager, and you have a very clear point of contact throughout the whole lifespan of the project. And this means that we can give effective communication lines constantly, but we also set up formal weekly or bi-weekly reports or telecoms as required based on the need of the client. Within Epichem, we value the fact that we have developed agile teams, so that means that we can always change and move as the requirements of the clients change and move. So we have the next slide, please. So one of the other things is that you really do not want any surprises or unknowns. So next, please. So from us, we make sure that our quotes are very clear and very tailored to your request. We have no cost surprises in the fact that when we quote as an FTE rate, that actually includes the consumables and reagents throughout the project. And the only additional costs which may occur would be clearly communicated to the client first. And these could be any additional items that, such as things like doing chiral chromatography on a large scale, where that wouldn't be considered as included within that particular project remit. Next slide, please. The other part that we really do not ever want to see is the fact is that you're seeing replication of your data or unsatisfactory transfer of your data or IP to other customers or other clients, etc. So again, the way that Epichem deals with this is the fact that within the contracts, all the intellectual property data and deliverables are fully owned by the client. and it's all controlled within our internal quality systems. We have a unique code for each individual client base. So within that gives us a unique tracer, an identifier for each individual project. And we have an internal compound and logistics management as well, which helps with the security and obviously the logistics of shipping and requirements for our projects. And all this fits within our quality management system. And as Colin alluded to earlier, this all fits within our ISO accreditation and our NATO accreditation around the 17025 and 17034. Next slide, please. The other entity that no one really ever wants to see is that there's no missing information or misinformation during a project. So the key points that we have here is the fact that we always consider our teams as being extremely collaborative and friendly and approachable. And one of the things with that is part of having that collaboration is the fact that we do give honest updates in that when chemistry is not proceeding as expected, we make that very clear, but we will come forward with possible solutions. It's not a case of just saying that this chemistry is not working. We will come forward with some other options to approach that particular deliverable. This means that then we can keep those real honest communication lines going, because we appreciate that and that the client's needs are there, but they also, chemistry is difficult and challenging, and sometimes surprises happen. Within that, we individualize and make sure, as we said before, that the data and registration and storage is completely secure, so that there's no this information is ever transferred to anyone else or has the opportunity to be transferred to anyone else. And we have in-house logistics and compound management to manage that data security. Next slide, please. So now I just wanted to go through a few options and a few situations around within the drug discovery pipeline itself. So one of the key things that we quite often get asked is at an early stage where it's hit to lead or hit identification. So at this point, as I said, the quality is really important, because if you're going to progress your hit, you need to know that the quality of the material is actually as you expect. And one of the things that you're doing at this stage is obviously looking at resupply of materials to confirm your original hits. So you have to have that full confidence around the material that you're receiving. During this, the chemistry team will also establish how robust the chemistry is and start looking at building SAR relationships. And via that process, we can actually start triaging the data and help to actually give you the information to provide guidance around how to triage your series so that you can end up with a suitable series to move to the next stage. And in these kind of projects, typically this can last between 6 to 12 months. And on average, within Epichem, this can be anywhere between 1 to 4 FTEs, depending on the number of series that we're actually evaluating at this stage. At the next slide, please. Once these hits have been progressed, they can go into the lead optimization stage. And as I've written here, essentially this is really in fundamental to looking at the particular series that you're going to evaluate to potentially select a clinical candidate or preclinical candidate. So you want to evaluate and progress the compounds through this iterative design that I mentioned at the beginning. And within Epichem, we developed these methods, we developed the routes, the pathways to rapidly design and resynthesize key compounds. And that could be changing chemical strategies so that we can utilize internal and external building blocks to quickly evaluate a particular area. Or it could be just a case of following guidance from the client, who will guide us around those particular targets because they have a clear understanding of the model and a better understanding of the needs. So this is where this collaborative working comes in. Even though we are experts and we're willing to give you advice, we do take on board that in a number of the cases, the client is the expert in that area. Everything is driven by the target product profile, as I said earlier. And this is really your sort of guiding tool around what the ultimate goal is for the project. So during this stage, we also optimize the synthetic routes and assess how and what Epichem can do to enable scale up. So we will do that as early as possible so that we can actually fully evaluate these lead series as part of this triaging process. And of course, the key factor is making sure that we maintain documentation, review the process, and optimize any of that data so that it can be expedited or transferred to at any stage of the process. So during this stage, it tends to typically run for around 12 to 24 months. Again, this is dependent on the number of leads. And this is really where we have the predominant focus of resources between 2 and 8 FTEs. The next slide, please. The final stage is really around the candidate selection. And the key objective here is obviously to have a full evaluation of your preclinical candidates. And by then, we quite often will be doing work such as some early process and research development, and that's really optimizing routes to minimize chromatography, remove any flagged solvents or reagents that are expensive or can be reduced during the synthetic routes. During that time as well, because we have our in-house analytical department, we can actually do some method development and develop some methods that can be quickly transferred for reference analysis or in-process checks once this moves into manufacture or early pilot scale manufacture. This means that we have a very agile company process which can enable and expedite these kind of processes within the pipeline. Within this, as I say, we do have a strong network as well, so we can support the next steps or give you advice on how to expedite those next steps into the clinic. Next slide, please. So I just thought I'd just give a couple of case studies just as examples of kind of work that we have done here at Epichem. So the first case study is for a non-for-profit drug research company in the neglected diseases area. And this has actually been a long 14-year ongoing relationship with this company. And Epichem has come essentially their sole chemistry provider in that we lead the chemistry, we lead the project management, and we actually maintain and lead all the compound management for all the projects within the lead op part of this entity. So during that process, we actually have evaluated hits. We've done chemistry around hit to lead optimization, and inputted around process R&D chemistry as well. And that has involved some significant changes in some routes for some of the progressing compounds in their portfolio. So at Epichem, we actually drive all the medicinal chemistry for this particular project. And that means that we design, evaluate, identify, and move on particular series based on the biological output, which is shared with us within the collaboration. And also looking at ADME data and progressing leads and hits based on their ADME and PK profiles. So over that time, we have made over 2,400 compounds in the last couple of years around one particular neglected disease. And within the last year, we made over 500 compounds within a series that we're evaluating. During that time, as I said, we evaluated several hit series and have now established a lead series, which we're currently optimizing. We move to the next slide, please. So the second case study was a European biotech company that we worked with, and this was looking at some novel heterocyclic analogues, which were proven to be extremely challenging chemistry. So this was a short run 4 to 6 month contract. But again, during this time, we actually were given the targets by the client in this case, and we developed the synthetic routes to the cores, which are extremely challenging cores, which meant that we had to look at multiple options. And we can successfully say that we can communicate that we had great success with this in the fact that we developed a range of diverse cores through this process and delivered a number of final compounds relating to those cores to the client, which has aided the client then to transition this information into their lab and potentially develop some future IP. Next slide, please. The third one is really is around an Australian biotech that we've worked with on multiple cases, and this has been repeat business as and when required. So these could vary from 2 to 3 month contracts, and in some cases up to a year to 2 year contracts. So with this, we have been involved as a medicinal chemistry consultant. We have designed targets in collaboration with the client as well, based on the feedback from previous series or hits that they have internally. So here we have developed, as I said, we developed a number of lead series through our MedChem consultation, which actually led to a new series being developed and exemplified by the chemists within Epichem. We've looked at a number of new routes to get to these compounds and develop strategies so that they could actually be fully evaluated and derivatized in an efficient way. Through this, we have then also used this information and been in constant conversation with this client about advising around strategic planning for the future in terms of IP and processes around chemistry. And during the whole process as well, we have been the sole compound management and logistics for this company, and we're still shipping compounds as required for further assays. So my next slide, please. So just to wrap up, just to give a summary. So essentially, why should you choose Epichem? And I think the thing is, as I said, the main thing as a company, we really do have true visions and values, and we do emphasize quality throughout our way of working, and it's a mindset within the team. We listen and respond to clients' needs, and we consider ourselves to be agile, adaptable, and scalable. We have a proven record of being problem solvers, and we have developed these skills. And that's because we basically are focused, and we have true MedChem experience within the team here at Epichem. As I said, we have a proven record. We get continued business and repeat business to emphasize that. We have clear lines of communication in that you have a designated point of contact, and we feel ourselves to be very honest and friendly and collaborative. Overall, we have a quality-centric approach to everything that we do, as I say, in terms of deliveries and the way that we communicate our information. And we have competitive pricing, and there's no surprises. So it makes it easy for the client to actually budget and plan ahead without having any of these surprises appear during this process. And probably the fundamental and the most important thing is really around we understand the importance of IP and data security, and it's pivotal to our company. Next slide. So yes, so that's the end of my presentation, and we refer to any questions.
So thank you very much, Colin and Gary, for helping us to better understand the importance of quality as it pertains, certainly to the drug discovery process. We do have a few questions I'd like to read through. I'll start with the first question I have here. Can your team synthesize oligonucleotides? And if so, at what scale?
Yes, so the answer is yes, we do oligonucleotides. And we have a number of projects we have ongoing, and it's one of these ones where, in terms of scale, it's a difficult question to answer, to be honest. We can do, at the moment, we have some projects which work up to high millimole concentrations of oligonucleotides, but we do have the capability to expand on that if required.
Thank you. My next question I have here is, if your team develops IP during a client project, who owns the IP?
So I'm happy to answer that one there, Stephen. So it's a very good question, so thank you. The IP is owned by the client. So we always state very clearly that we will be the service provider in that example, and the IP will remain the property of the client moving forward.
I see. Okay, great. Has your work contributed to approved products in the US?
The answer is yes. So we often get this question frequently. So when you look at the last 18 years of Epichem's existence, there's been a number of not only pre-trial clinical candidates, but products that have ended up both commercially available and in the marketplace. As you would appreciate, a lot of these are under non-disclosure and confidentiality, but the answer is there's been a number of those examples that we're very, very, very proud of over our 18-year history.
Great. And I have another one here. Do you have partnerships with GMP drug substance and drug product manufacturers in Australia or the US?
So the answer is yes. So as Gary alluded to in his presentation, we have a lot of partners that have been preferred providers that have been screened for quality by the Epichem quality management systems and processes and protocols. And yes, we do have GMP partners in that space.
I see. Great. I do have, see a question from someone in the audience about sharing the presentation. We are definitely planning on doing that. I may not have addressed that at the beginning of our presentation today, but yes, everyone will certainly receive a link to a recording of today's presentation. You can count on that. Does anybody else have any more questions for Colin or Gary before we wrap up today's presentation?
I'll just say,
I'm sorry, go ahead.
Sorry, Steve, I was going to add to your comment. I think, and for the audience, please visit the Epichem website. A copy of the presentation will also be posted on there, and you'll also be able to see more information about the examples of the work that we do above and beyond what Gary shared today, but also all of our other suites and services that are available to our clients worldwide. I think I mentioned earlier, we currently export to more than 40 countries. The US market is our largest market. So for those US members of the audience today, one thing that we pride ourselves on is, we've done a lot of work with US-based entities to accelerate commercialization of their assets and their technology during that period of time.
Outstanding. Well, I think many of our audience are from areas around the globe. So unless there's any other questions, depending upon where you're located. Oh, wait a minute. It looks like we may have a couple more. Hang on just a moment. One question, here's a couple more questions. One question we have is, what are you most proud of?
So I'm happy to answer that, and Gary can add. I think first and foremost is making a difference to patients. I mean, when you look at drug discovery, we're in the very early part of the commercialization process, so to speak. But one thing I can say to you is one of the clients that we work with is in the ophthalmic space. we work together in partnership and developed a technology which allows them to advance the treatment of stopping people from going blind. And you know, I suppose if you ask me why I get up in the morning and run this organisation, it's purely about making a difference to patients. Because at the end of it, we exist on behalf of clients for the benefits of patients and accelerating commercialisation of their novel, innovative, and disruptive technologies. So that's what makes me most proud to lead an organisation like Epichem. Gary?
Yeah, and I think really for me, it's just the pride comes from actually adding to value to all our clients, in the fact that every project that we work with, as we say, we treat as it's the focus and the importance of where they want to get to, and we appreciate that you want your value from your money, which you're investing in our company. So I think that the pride, as I say, is every time we deliver on an entity for a particular client or deliver on their needs, that makes us proud as a company.
Thank you.
Sorry, Steve, I was just going to add to that. I think, you know, we employ a very large number of PhD qualified chemists. And that was one of our objectives when we started Epichem 18 years ago. So I think, you know, in answer to the question about being proud and pride, I think, you know, the fact that we provide a very nurturing, growing environment for our chemists to apply their trade and their passion and do what they do best in providing outcomes for clients and ultimately for patients is something that we are not only proud of, but we should never lose sight of, because we've seen in the last 2 years the academic sector's been decimated, and you know, if people weren't working at Epichem in Australia as the sole Australian-owned medicinal chemistry commercial provider, you know, and not able to secure a job in academia, then they'd probably be working in industries or sectors outside their skill set, or doing something that they don't really want to do. And I think that's something we're also very proud of.
And that dovetails nicely with another question I see here. Someone is asking how the Australian lockdown affected your business and your ability to get your work done for your clients.
So we were probably lucky that Epichem, based on our planning, we haven't closed a single day during the height of the pandemic in the last 2 years. We were the only member of the global consortium for the client that Gary mentioned that we've had a 14-year relationship with. We were the only member of that consortium that remained open during the height of the pandemic. So we have probably benefited from that somewhat, where we've obviously worked with more US and European-based clients when their laboratories and their universities were actually closed and they couldn't access their facilities. And we've also done a lot of work in coming to the support of other providers in Australia in the Eastern Seaboard when they were in full lockdown. The other thing that was of benefit to our clients on the global scale is that, you know, because of the time difference that was initially seen as a hindrance, people have now realised that that's a real benefit, where people can open their computer and they'll see the results from what we've created 12 hours earlier. So they get the results, you know, and we're working while they're sleeping and vice versa. So you know, I'm happy to say to you that, you know, as much as the pandemic has had an impact, I think the impact for us has been probably more around the supply chain disruption, where we've seen probably the supply chain is probably stretched out from by about 2 to 4 weeks, depending on the starting material reagents that we have to source on behalf of the clients, and freight costs have gone up considerably as well. So in terms of doing the work, we've continued to operate, and we're actually recognised by the Australian government as an essential service provider based on the nature of work that we do. So yeah, look, I think from that point of view, we've pivoted extremely well during the pandemic.
It certainly sounds like it. I have another question here. Does Epichem manufacture at large scale, or is this handed over to an overseas manufacturer after drug discovery?
Yeah, so we don't do manufacture. So yes, we would hand it over, but as I said, we have the capability for developing technical transfer documents. We can supply standards, reference standards, etc., to help help with that transition. But no, we don't do manufacture per se.
I see.
We do, Steve, just adding on from Gary, we do milligram to multigram scale. We comply with GMP. Although we're not GMP certified, we do comply with all of the GMP requirements on behalf of the clients. And that's held us in very good stead with our clients over the last 18 years. So, so it's very much, as Gary alluded to, when it becomes sort of kilogram scale, we know our limitations, and we turn to our partners to support us in that process.
I see. Who is your ideal? I got another question here. This one's got a couple of sentences here. Who is your ideal client? What size firm? What funding levels? What type of molecules / therapeutics? What parts of the world are you most certified, registered, and positioned for?
So that probably has a number of parts. I can answer most of it, and then Gary. So our largest market's the US, followed by Europe, and then select the more mature markets of Asia Pacific. As I alluded to earlier, we do service both products and services to more than 40 countries. We're actually therapy agnostic. So when I look back at the last 18 years, we've worked across oncology, cardiovascular, diabetes, infectious diseases, including respiratory, immunology, vaccines, and I've probably forgotten quite a few right now. But I think neglected diseases, ophthalmology, ophthalmics. We've worked including agriculture, fungicides, pesticides, toxic products. So we've worked across a whole spectrum. So I think it's fair to say that Epichem is very sort of therapy agnostic. We're not niched in one area. Obviously, because of the nature of the work that we do a a lot of work around oncology. We do a lot of work around neglected diseases because of our client that we've had a collaboration and partnership with for 14 years. But we work with 1 FTE. We work with 6 FTE. We can do larger than that if required. We have a talent pool of chemists. So if a client came to us and they wanted 5 the FTE, tomorrow in the next few weeks, we can pivot to bring our talent pool on board if required. I hope that answers most of the questions for the audience member. But if I've forgotten anything, Gary, anything else I've forgotten to?
No, I think you've covered it all. I think I don't think there's a thing as an ideal client, as Colin said. We have such a range, and it's good to have that range. And I think that's why I sort of put in the title at the beginning that it's to do with sort of large and small projects. We treat everything exactly the same. So the clients are all treated in the same way, and their projects are personalised for their needs, whether it's 1 FTE or whether it's up to 8 FTEs. It's based on that philosophy.
Great to know.
I think Stephen, I think what's probably more important for the client base is probably understanding the actual client journey. We can scale up when required. We can scale down if required. Some of our projects we've started with 1 FTE and then we've ended up with 6 FTE within the 12-month period based on the scale-up potential of the work we do together in partnership. So like I said, we're very flexible, and we have built-in flexibility models within the organisation to cater for that. And like I said, we're in a privilege that we've been around a long time with a lot of experience, and we've got a lot of loyal chemists who've been with us right from inception. So that puts us in a good, strong position.
Great. I've got another question. What is the maximum kilogram or kg that you can produce?
I think it's fair to say at Epichem we'll probably go to a kilo scale.
Yeah. Up to a kilo.
Internally.
Yeah.
Okay, and we're coming up to the top of the hour here. I'll probably have time for 1 or 2 more questions. What's your opinion and advice about the testing needed for mRNA, messenger RNA vaccines versus the traditional vaccine types?
Sorry, the testing requirements, did you say?
Yes, about the testing needed. What's your opinion and advice about the testing needed for mRNA vaccines versus the traditional vaccine types?
Yeah, I'm not really in the position, I think, to answer that question in terms of, because as I say, there's obviously guidelines around the requirements for those. Essentially, they go through the same parameters as any drug which gets moved onto the market, and it's all aimed obviously around safety. So there's not really a lot more I can add to the specifics of that.
Sure. No, I get that. You know, I think we're starting to come up towards the top of the hour here. I want to thank everybody very much for joining the presentation today, no matter where you're located. If your day's just starting out or you're wrapping up your day, we very much appreciate your time. We hope that you found this to be very helpful and informative, and we will be sending out a link to a recording of the presentation. And if you have any questions that you think about after this presentation, please feel free to reach out to us at any time. We'd be glad to answer those questions for you. Gary or Colin, anything else to add?
No, thank you, Stephen, and thank you to the audience for your generous time and your participation this evening.
Yeah, thank you.
Thanks again, everyone, and have a great day.